This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey man, just walking to the park now on a early Saturday morning. Got up a little bit earlier thanks to my cat wanting food. I normally get up at 6:50 on weekdays and feed her straight away, or feed them straight away. And they like the same eating hours on the weekends. So at about 8 o'clock in the morning, not too different to the movie I'm about to talk about, I hear crazy banging on a door demanding food. So I'm up now and I'm out for a walk a little bit earlier than I normally would. What can you do? So yeah, saw Whippins last night. I had done something that you advocate for a long time, and that is watch horror movies at nighttime. And I don't know if it's the quality of the atmosphere in this movie or just the fact of watching a horror movie at nighttime anyway, although you could debate if this is a straight up horror movie, which I suppose I will at some point in this voice note. But yeah, it very much unnerved me, very much made me feel not at ease. And I don't know if you heard that there, but a guy snorting off some snot, all the ambience of the background. So yeah, I don't know how much of that is down to the filmmaking or down to the time of night, and kind of begs the question, doesn't it? If you watch the comedy high, or maybe for some people very tipsy, and you laughed a lot more, would that be down to watching the comedy under the right circumstances? Yeah, well, of course you're meant to watch a comedy stoned. Of course you're meant to watch a comedy tipsy. I wonder, does that mean it's kind of the same thing for a horror movie when you watch it at nighttime? Well, of course you're meant to watch it at nighttime. Of course you're meant to watch it at 12 a.m. when all the creepy monsters and witches come out. Of course you are. Yeah, but that's an external stimulus being used to almost 4D or 5D your experience. Like when you go to those cinemas and you're watching a movie like Avatar and water like sprays you in the face. In a way, something like watching a horror movie at night gives you a natural extra stimulus to add to what you're watching. And I wonder, is there any other genre like that? Obviously, I joked about the comedy stimulus, and I'm almost half serious, but at the same time, you're purposely taking something to alter yourself in that state. Whereas at nighttime, you do nothing different but choosing a different time of day or night, as the case would be. And I don't know where the end game of that is. You watch an Arctic movie outside. You watch, I don't know, a movie set around the food industry, Hungry. Like, where can you go with this? I'm just trapped between the main road now of these cars. So I don't know how much of this part you'll get. But anyway, I think we both very much enjoyed Barbarian. And that was a movie that I think I saw before you, and I just told you watch it. And it is the movie that I watched without knowing a single thing. I did not know anything. I didn't even know that certain actors would appear in that movie, which is almost a spoiler in itself. And I think one of the main charms, if you want to call it that, or the unique selling points of Barbarian is that you really can't predict where it's going to go. Without giving any spoilers away in a specific sense, you really don't know what kind of movie you're getting. You think multiple times that you are going to get a certain type of movie, and it constantly does a 180, and you really can't grasp where it's going to go. And I think it was Kevin Smith when he wrote Red State, which is not a like for like, but in another way, you really don't know the swerves that movie's going to take at times, especially the first time watching it. It really surprises you. And he said when he was writing that, he just kept on just writing. And then anytime he wrote himself into a corner, just came up with something even more crazier. And Barbarian feels a bit like that. And what's fantastic about Barbarian is you cannot see the magician. You cannot see the artistry, the puppet master that is guiding you through those decisions and those swerves. Now, that'll bring me on to Weapons, which I mentioned in a way is a horror movie. It's probably more fitting to call it a mystery movie, but I don't really get bogged down into genre talk too much. But just in how it's set up, there's a central mystery at the very beginning. All these kids left the houses in a single classroom at a certain time in the night. Only 2 people from that classroom don't disappear, and that is one kid from the classroom and the school teacher, played by Julie Garner. I think that's the actress's name. She's a good actress. I've liked her. And yeah, so that's the setup. Get an angry town hall meeting exchange to begin with, where the parents are furious at the Julie Garner character. And I don't really know if that makes sense from the offset. I guess small town, looking for somebody to blame, I can buy that. But because the premise is so outlandish, that it just seems strange in a way that they would blame her. Now, I guess there's countless other characters that are saying that and calling it out. So I suppose that neutralizes the problem I have with it. And I think this movie very much shows the artistry, very much shows the puppetry. Well, in a way, it's literally a movie about puppetry, controlling people, and almost making people see things and do things that they would normally do or react to, which I guess is a statement in itself for this director. But I was very aware that that manipulation was used on me as an audience member, and it almost takes the structure of something like Barbarian in one way and just breaks it up into a kind of Pulp Fiction format almost. And that really draws attention to itself and the swerves it's trying to take. We've got all these different characters, and we do have a compelling mystery. So on the one hand, I really did enjoy, for a lot of the time, trying to figure out what the hell happened. And because Barbarian is so crazy, it does make you think you're in safe hands. So I was very relaxed in letting the mystery unfold. And I even had a theory at one stage that the kids left the classroom because there was a school shooting about to happen, because Josh Brolin's character dreams about a machine gun and all the kids are missing but one. So I had all these theories, and the fact that the movie is not able to almost steer you in a direction that you think is coming is a positive of the movie. But I feel like this movie does a lot of misdirection and a lot of non-linear storytelling to fill in the blanks that you feel like you need to know and feel like you want to know at the time. But on the one hand, what it's doing is prolonging a story that probably feels like it would be solved within 40 minutes of runtime without this. And so much so, when we get the final act, or maybe it's not the final act, maybe just before the final act, where we follow the boy, I feel like that whole sequence was to fill in any plot hole or any question you might have on your list of things that you've written down. And in a way, that's a little bit of a problem, because when I was watching the movie, I had a lot of questions. Okay, so the parents haven't been seen in a while, but the whole town is doing a witch hunt looking for her, or sorry, looking for the rest of the kids, and the parents are zombie-like almost in their home. And there's a scene where the teacher character, she's in the car asleep, and the mother comes out from the boy's family and takes a lock of her hair in order to control the school principal to attack her and kill her. And I'm thinking, if you can control people with their possessions, why don't you just take that lock and just force her to jump off a bridge? And you know, a lot of movies don't pull up the scrutiny in that way, but the fact that I was thinking about it while watching it at times was, not to say a failure of the movie, but a negative of the movie. Now, I didn't do it that much, but at the same time, I was asking those questions, and then we get the boys' flashback, and then it's almost filling in the plot holes that I had, where I'm thinking, oh, okay, the parents were just up, they said they had a stroke, okay, they moved the kids, okay, that's what happened. And it's almost like an act that's clunkily placed, that is there to give the exposition to every problem you had. And I almost wish in a way that that scene became first, so I could settle down with those questions. I mean, the one of the hair is never really clarified, but you can put that down to dramatic license of there was a cool scene, or maybe the old woman and Gladys, I think it is, maybe she wanted misdirection and wanted to pin it on the teacher, the the principal of the teacher. I could buy that. That's not much of a problem. But I think the movie overestimates its own mystery at times. But, and this is thankfully carried over from Barbarian, I think they're really good at getting the most out of adrenaline-induced scenes. And there is some of that Barbarian magic at times. For instance, we get this backstory of a cop. I can't remember the actor's name. He was in Hail Caesar and he played the young Han Solo. I think Adrian something, Elrenike, something like that, making him sound like a Star Trek character. So there's this loose connection between the characters. He knows the teacher, he meets up with her, he sleeps with her, and all that stuff is misdirection, mystery in a way. And how will these pieces fit together? Misdirection, jigsawing, I suppose. But the scenes like when that police officer is on patrol and then he sees this junkie that was almost a cameo in an earlier scene, and the junkie is trying to rob some store or something, and there's a brilliant chase sequence, and he eventually searches him, and he realizes, he asks him repeatedly, oh, if I search you, is there going to be anything on you, like a needle or anything? And then he puts his hand in the pocket, and he gets pricked on a needle, and he snaps, and he punches the junkie, and then immediately realizes the camera. Scenes like that are really good. And then later on, we see that junkie going to report the crime, and then he chases the junkie out of just before he can get to the police station, because the police chief says to the policeman, if this isn't reported, this tape is going to get deleted. This body cam footage, well, car cam footage is going to be deleted. It's no problem. So all that is really tense and really good. And when the junkie showed up, I thought, I wonder, was he there to report something got to do with the family and the missing kids? And I don't know if that was just me being ahead of the curve, or you're just very used to this type of storytelling at this point. But when there's seemingly random people interacting at this point, it almost lends itself to you speculating. And the scene was funny, actually, as well. And there is a lot of dark humor and humor to break the tension of some scenes. And so then we get the junkie's backstory when he's wakes up that day before, and he's trying to rob cars, and he's trying to sell this girl's toy that he robbed to the pawnbroker. And that's very good type of stuff. But this director, that is reminiscent of some of the energy of Barbarian, particularly probably the scenes with Justin Long, I suppose. And yeah, all that's good. And then he gets to the house, and then he's in the house, and then he's noticed something's creepy going on, but he's really motivated by the money and his crack addiction. And when he notices the parents sitting down, he says sorry, but then he realizes they're basically brain dead, and he continues to rob the house, and then he notices the kids. And that's the prequel, if you will, to how he gets to the police station, because he gets chased by them eventually and runs out of the house. So individually, some scenes like that work very well. Sometimes, which Barbarian somehow managed to completely sidestep, the over-the-top campy moments in Barbarian never took away from the intensity, and if anything, sometimes they added it without getting into some of the later scenes, which I know you're talking about. In Weapons, at times, when we get further into the mystery and we realize who Aunt Gladys is, although we never really know who Aunt Gladys is, it's a very basic possession movie at its core. And not to say that's disappointing, but you realize there's a lot of build up and a lot of misleading to get you to at the heart of something very conventional. And that's not a fault of the filmmakers, because they do it quite well. But at times when you get to the end, it feels like a mid-season bad guy in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Now, fortunately, I like Buffy the Vampire Slayer quite a lot, so I didn't mind. I thought it quite refreshing in a throwback sense. Now, I don't know if the movie is trying to do that, but that's where I felt I was. So that's kind of my intellectual breakdown of Weapons. Now, here's my visceral reaction to Weapons, watching it late at night. I found it quite scary at times. I found the Aunt Gladys, when she showed up as a clown early on, where you don't quite know what's happening, where she's on top of the ceiling, when she shows up in the middle of nowhere during the daytime, which is quite creepy for like a mini second. I found all that stuff really creepy. I think me being on edge heightened a lot of the first 3/4 of the movie, because it almost overrode the questions and the problems I had in this voice note. It didn't really matter, and a lot of the scary things don't happen very often. So I think that type of restraint for a long time keeps you on edge and keeps you guessing and adds a lot of extra mileage to the scenes that you otherwise wouldn't. So a lot of times with mystery movies, you are 100% focused on the mystery, trying to solve the case. Does this add up? And in this stuff like The Sixth Sense and Weapons, although I'm not putting them on the same level, it has enough scariness and enough creepiness as you continue the mystery that it just adds a heightened sense of danger to every scene, even when there isn't. So, and it does give you moments that you don't expect, like when Garner's at the police station with Josh Brolin, or not the police station, at the petrol station, and can't remember the actor's name, he was in Doctor Strange. He just runs like a maniac, broad daylight, and he comes and he's intent on killing her, and he is an absolute maniac. That scene comes out of nowhere, and the feeling that you get in that scene lurks in almost every scene early on in this movie. Well, I say early on, for more than half the movie. So I have to give it to him. I have to give it to them, in my opinion, because they managed a way to infuse a certain feeling into a lot more of the movie by not showing something than showing something. And I mentioned this basically a possession movie. On the other hand, it turns into a zombie movie almost at times, when you realize that you have to Gladys lady breaks a twig, those people she's taking possession of just attack, hence the name weapons, I suppose. And they very much act like zombies, they scream like zombies. But I found them quite different to zombies, and I found them a lot more scarier than zombies in a way. Now, at times they played for straight up laughs, which worked quite well, where the crackhead guy is running at Josh Brolin and he keeps throwing him away and he keeps on coming back. That's like something out of a scary movie, but it works quite well within the confines of the movie. And then at times as well, where in the end scene the kids are freed and they run after Gladys, I think that doesn't work quite as well, because I could feel the kids having a good time chasing. I could feel the fun that the kids were having in that scene for some reason. As much as they tried to crank up the sound, crank up the jumping through windows and everything, I could really feel the enjoyment that the kid actors were having in that scene. So yeah, it was a mixed bag in terms of that. But what I liked about the zombies in this, of course they're not zombies, but I felt like because they had somebody else's motivation, almost like they were ordered to do it, even though they're doing the exact same thing as zombies in a way. They're not trying to bite someone to infect them and eat them, but they are trying to choke them. It's basically doing the same thing in a way. But there's something much more relentless about them, much more like the Terminator that you don't normally get from zombies. So I like that aspect of it, and I like the actress who plays Gladys as well. I don't know her name, but I have a feeling she was also in Barbarian as the character, shall we say, that appears a lot later in the movie. She's got a great physicality. She's got that Doug Jones energy almost, where just there's something disproportionate, there's something unnatural about her limb to body ratio on screen that just makes her inherently eerie and inherently untrustworthy. And yeah, I think she's always a good actor to cast in creepy roles. So yeah, all in all, I think I enjoyed it quite a lot. I was aware of the artistry as it was happening, which is a negative. So we got 1 plus 1 negative, and then we got the experience I got by the setting in which I watched it in, which really added to it, as you often champion. So it'll be interesting now when we get into Spooktober, although I don't have the luxury of watching the movies the same day as you sometimes. So sometimes I'll watch it the next day when I get a bit of free time, but I know you watch Spooktober at night time. But it'll be interesting if I continue to do that, what extra level I'll bring to my experience. Now, having said that, I actually don't like being scared. I don't like the type of I don't know, ghoulish mayhem, and not to say gore, because I don't mind gore and action, but something about gore and the horror genre that really makes me uncomfortable, as I live in a city and I'm constantly exposed to gory stories on TikTok or social media platforms, especially, almost against my consent. So something that it's not a experience that I'm entirely comfortable with at this level, but maybe that's the point.
I love that phrasing. I don't like the kind of ghoulish mayhem that horror brings. Straight out of the Catholic priest sermon rule book there. But yeah, interesting stuff. Great to hear your thoughts on it. I watched the movie last night. I think you watched it quite a while ago. Let's see. Let's look back at your voice note. You watched it Saturday. It's now Friday. I watched it Thursday night. So going back a week into your memory now. Yeah, this is one I was really looking forward to. I was a huge fan of Barbarian. Barbarian is my favorite horror movie of recent years. It's a rare horror movie that I've watched multiple times. I watched it the first time on my own, and I was so blown away. I was like, I have to show this to my wife. This is fucking amazing. And I had no real awareness of Zach Kreger, if that is his name. I have a friend at work who's a massive fan of The Whitest Kids You Know, and who's tried to get me to watch some of their stuff, and hasn't massively clicked for me. So I went into it just like, what's this thing? I mean, I'm a big horror fan. I love the ghoulish mayhem of it all, and so I watch every major horror movie, and it was a very highly regarded one, so I watched it anyway, and just fucking adored it. Like, it really worked for me. You described it well in your voice note, and I know your voice note wasn't specifically about Barbarian, but you know, one can't help but talk about Barbarian when talking about weapons. There's so many interesting ways in which he's sort of building upon ideas that he had with Barbarian, but I think the most famous and talked about thing of Barbarian is the thing of, like, you just don't know what type of movie you're watching. You don't know what you're getting. You assume in the first act that it's a, what if you're a lone, vulnerable woman alone, and you find yourself in an enclosed space with a guy that you don't know, and then he turns out to be a complete psycho, and then it isn't necessarily what you're getting, but you're kept on you're kept on the edge of your seat so much through that movie. And this film has a lot of that kind of mystery, but where Barbarian is a straight up horror movie, I think you said in your voice note, it's debatable whether Weapons is a horror movie or it's a mystery movie. I mean, not to say that they're mutually exclusive, but I think Weapons doesn't have the feeling of a straight up horror movie. And by straight up, I mean, that's just what it is. It's not really any other genre. It's just a horror movie. Weapons is sort of a mixture of different things. Sorry if you're getting a lot of background noise here. I'm on a busy street and I'm about to peel off it now. So, yeah. I'll probably come back to Barbarian about 17 more times in this voice note, because there's just lots of interesting interplay between the two. But needless to say, when Weapons was on the horizon, I was very excited about it. You know, it's the next film by the director of my favorite horror film of at least the last 5 years, I'd say. And I think it was quite quickly embraced by the horror community. Obviously, I'm doing my best to avoid any kind of information about it, like reviews, or haven't watched any of the trailers or anything like that. Once I'm sold on the movie, like truly sold on it, where I'm like, I'm definitely going to watch that movie, then I'm putting the blinders on. I just don't want to know anything about it. I also don't watch horror in the cinema because I can't be scared when there's other people around or any kind of distractions. So with how much Barbarian scared me, the first act of Barbarian is the best act of a horror film I've seen in the last 5 years, hands down. Second act is good as well, and the third act, it goes off the rails, which is usually the case with horror. It's very commonplace. Not guaranteed. I wouldn't say that, you know, there are certainly horror films that have decent third acts, but you know, it is normal for that classic thing of like, don't ever show the monster. Once you show the monster, you kind of killed your movie. Like, it's very hard once there's no suspense or mystery left anymore, and it's just like a completely known situation. It's very hard to still be, for the movie to be still at its best. It could still be decent, but still at its best is like almost impossible. So, but that first act of Barbarian is just like fucking dynamite. And I thought, if I can get that kind of on edge scares of year one from Barbarian edging her way down that staircase, and like, if I can get that again, I don't want to fucking ruin that by going to see it in the cinema. Even though I knew it was like this, one of the sleeper hits of the year, this and Sinners, like the big two horror movies that are original ideas and have done really well at the box office, that aren't sequels or anything like that. So part of me kind of wanted to be part of that that sensation, and therefore see it in the cinema. But no, I was like, no, I'm gonna hold off. I'm gonna do this right. I'm gonna watch it at home. So it's been a long time coming from when I first heard that he had a movie on the way to last night actually sitting down and watching it. It's been a long time, a long wait, and thankfully, against all the odds, I have managed to avoid most spoilers. The only thing I knew is that the movie involved children, and that's more than I'd like to have known. But obviously you find out that it involved children within the first 5 minutes of the movie. Now, months of knowing that it involved children, or at least weeks, does colour the experience a bit, because you're thinking, oh, is this a Children of the Corn, like evil kid type movie? And really, I'd like to just know nothing. But anyway, as spoilers go, it was very, very light, very, very light spoiler territory. So yeah, actually watched 2 movies last night, both movies that you've watched last weekend, and you've put a sort of fire under my ass of, I got to get to these movies. So I got Spooktober coming in about a week's time, when I'll start watching a horror movie every day for October. So I wanted to get these in beforehand, because I knew I wouldn't be able to watch them. I waited another week, I just wouldn't see them for months. I thought it'd be better to watch them while they're still sort of safe in your, or not safe, fresh in your head. So did one of them last night. It's a relatively short movie Together, Dave Franco, Alison Brie. Got through it, and I guess I still had enough stamina in the tank. So I thought, I'll watch this movie, which is always like, it's the last thing I want to do is watch a movie when I don't know if I can go the distance, and I don't know if I'm going to be tired towards the end of the movie. But within 5 minutes of Weapons, I was like, I'm not going to get tired during this movie. He's a master director, I would say. I think movie number 2 is just about the earliest that I can think of ever calling someone a master director. He is, and I'm not saying the movie's amazing. Like, I liked the movie a fair bit. I'll just get that out of the way now. But when you watch a Spielberg movie and it's a bad movie, as many, many Spielberg movies are, you can see that you're in the hands of a master director. A master director is something different to great movie, because great movie involves the idea, the concept, script, everything like that. But if we just go like the filmmaking, he has that entertainment appeal just down to a T. It's so engaging the way he makes movies. It's such a nice thing to see what he did with a tiny little low budget movie like Barbarian, and how engaging that is, and how it's sort of exciting and fresh and sizzling it is. And then see him have like a significantly higher budget, supposedly not a blockbuster, but a significantly higher budget, all of these like interesting piece of camera work and montage and voiceover and just everything he's doing, the locations. It's so compelling, so engaging, and so exciting. So within like 5 minutes of the movie, I was like, okay, I'm in such good hands. This is absolutely primo popcorn entertainment cinema stuff, where you feel so looked after by the steward of the film that you're watching, you feel so happy that, you know, when you sit down with a master storyteller, I'm talking about like literal like storyteller in a room full of people, like, and they're just telling a story, and you're like, every turn of phrase, every twist and turn, every narrative beat is going to be handled so well. This is just going to be a great riveting time the whole way through. And that's how I felt early in this movie. It actually reminded me, and you referenced Sixth Sense in your voice note there. From an early point of watching this, it reminded me very strongly of the work of M. Night Shyamalan, who's another person who's made a lot of bad movies. Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but he's made some bad movies. But he has the ability to entertain. He has the ability to draw you in, make you give a shit about the story, the characters, the world, make you intrigued, get you invested. Like, he has that down to a T. And watching this movie, I was like, in the early parts especially, I was like, I am watching prime, like, golden era M. Night right here. So yeah, felt very good about it from the beginning. Now, I agree, or I don't know if you necessarily said this directly, but I also feel it's more of a mystery than it is a horror film. Personally, I didn't find it anywhere near as scary as Barbarian, which I found very scary. This I didn't really find that scary at all. The early scenes where there's like a knock at the door, that stuff is a bit scary, but yeah, it got me here and there with a few jump scares. I think Josh Brolin's dream sequence where he goes back to the bed, his child's bed, and he looks down at his son, and he looks up, and he looks down, and he looks up, and then he looks down again. He sees the aunt, who will eventually be revealed to be the aunt character. And I'm glad she was part of the movie, and it wasn't just like a recurring face, because for quite a while it was like, is this just a creepy looking face? Because both of his films that he's made, Zach Cregger, are hagsploitation films to an extent. So I was like, is he just throwing in like old woman in like heavy makeup as a, like, just a creepy image, and there's not going to be anything more to it? But no, of course not. She is the primary antagonist in the movie. So, but yeah, those kind of like random little moments, little jump scares are very effective sometimes, but the sustained dread and building suspense of Barbarian really got me, whereas this, the focus is more on like thriller, mystery, suspense, intrigue. Very engaging movie, but like less of a kind of through and through overt horror film for me. So yeah, really liked it. Love the cast of characters. I prefer Barbarian, for the record, but you know, that is certainly no slight to the film, because I think so highly of Barbarian. I think I've got my money's worth on this one. There is something different to me between supernatural horror and like real people horror. Like, however much Barbarian stretches credulity and in its third act kind of throws it completely out the window, it is still not literally a supernatural film, whereas this is. And I just can't connect with that as much as I can real horror. So witch stuff, as much as I think it's cool, it's not my jam, so to speak. It's not really ever going to be, is not ever going to give me that horror juice to the extent something like Barbarian could. But as witch stuff goes, I thought this was a really cool one. I've taken some notes on your voice notes. I'll just go over some of your thoughts there. So you talked earlier in the voice note about like my heavy preference for watching horror at night, and how are you really judging the film accurately if you're kind of adding a 4D experience of watching it at night. You referenced that, you know, when someone says, oh, you can't watch that comedy movie sober, you got to be stoned for that. Like, does that chip away at the quality of the of the comedy. I mean, here's how I think about it. Watching a horror film, not like, so for the record, my way of watching horror films, if I think it has any chance of scaring me, is I've got to watch it in pitch black, late at night, not just at night, but late at night. There can't be anyone else awake in the house. The ideal is that there's no one in the house awake or asleep, but there can't be anyone else awake in the house. So it has to be a zero interruption situation. There really shouldn't be people awake outside the house. Like, I shouldn't be watching a horror film and then I hear someone down on the street, like, calling out something, or like a bus driving by or something. I don't want anything that reminds me that what I'm seeing on the screen is not the entirety of existence. Now, I appreciate that's very high maintenance and not necessarily achievable for everyone, and also not necessarily achievable for me all the time. But I know from my own personal experience, the films that I've found the most scary and the most terrifying, I wouldn't even find remotely scary if I was watching in the same room as another person, or if I was watching it on my own and halfway through the movie someone walked through the room, went to the kitchen, made a sandwich and left. Like, that movie's just completely dead in the water at that point. And certainly if I'm like, it's 5 p.m. in the evening, I've just done daytime stuff, I go into a dark room, watch the movie, then I go back to doing daytime stuff, like that is just too, you're too comforted by the existence of the waking world, of the daytime, of the company, the comfort of a real world chugging along. Now, if you watch horror films under what I believe to be the optimum conditions, still 90% of horror movies are probably not going to scare you, or certainly me. Like, I can watch them under the optimum conditions. It's rare that one will work for me, but because it's so rare that a horror film will work on me, I want to at least give them their best chance. And it's such a, I mean, you said you don't like being scared by horror movies, so that's a completely different position that I'm coming from. For me, it is by far and away my favorite experience from cinema. Like, so far out in front of any other experience in horror, that in cinema, that I think about horror movies like as much as I think about all other movies combined. I'm like a horror movie addict. So for me, taking a movie that could potentially scare me and then watching it under the wrong conditions is such a huge loss, because the added element is that the best horror films, and by that I mean the scariest, often have very little else to offer. Like, they often have terrible acting, terrible dialogue, terrible plot holes everywhere. They're just like, they're not that good movies if you take away the scare element. And if you've taken away the scare element by watching it in the afternoon or something, you might as well be spending your time watching just a good drama. Watch a Scorsese movie, watch something that's an actual good movie in terms of its themes and its script and so forth. So that's my reasoning for watching them at night. Now, to counter your point of like, well, is it really a good horror movie if you have to go to all of these extreme measures to watch it? What I would say is, drinking alcohol or smoking a joint or something to watch a movie, that is adding something on top of watching a movie. Whereas what I'm talking about is subtracting distractions from the movie. So in the same way that a horror movie, I think, benefits greatly from zero distractions, zero existence of a world beyond the movie, I think every type of movie does as well, except for maybe comedy. Maybe comedy benefits from the hubbub of other people getting involved, like audience participation. And I guess you could say like some action, some other types of movies can benefit from audience participation, like a big block Spider-Man movie or something, like everyone go like, whoa, I can't believe he did that. But for the most part, I think distractions, phones, people coming into the room, breaking away for this conversation, that conversation, like just other noises outside, the less immersion you have with a movie, the less good that movie is going to be. And this is why, you know, watching it in the cinema is, well, it's one of the reasons why watching it in the cinema is improves a movie so much, in the same way that if you watch a film in the cinema that's like a Ken Loach kitchen sink drama, in other words, it's not a blockbuster, it's not like this big Dolby Atmos, like technical miracle thing, it's still so much better watching that in the cinema than it is watching it at home, because you're way more immersed in it than you would be if you're watching it in amongst the rest of life. I mean, walking through a park here now, I'm just watching someone having like a furious argument on his phone with someone, which is breaking my immersion right now. So I think it's a little different in that regard of, like, every film benefits from the conditions that I'm proposing horror should be watched under, but horror necessitates those conditions, at least to be at its strongest. And I happen to be someone who is very rarely scared by movies, but if you're someone who's like frequently scared by movies or easily scared by movies, like my sister, for example, who watches horror movies on her laptop in one small window whilst other things are going on in the rest of the screen, like with all the lights on, like looking at her phone frequently because that is the most intense that she can handle. It's an intensity nozzle. However you choose to position it is obviously your prerogative as a viewer, but it is a volume knob for how effective the horror movie is on a scares level. And I think if the movie, like Barbarian, for example, is made expressly to scare you, and you turn down the intensity novel, you might have made the right decision for what you're able to handle. But if you come away from the experience like, oh, I didn't think much of it, and I didn't find it scary, it's like, well, yeah, because you turned down the scares nozzle, like you turned the scares off. So it's like watching an action movie with all the violence cut out of it. You might choose to do that, but you're obviously not going to get what that film intended to give you. Now, just take this a step further on the comedy thing of like, is it, you know, if you got to watch this comedy movie, let's say I'm like, oh, well, you watch that comedy movie on your own, you got to watch it on like a Friday night packed theater in the like perfect type of neighborhood for like loads of audience participation and stuff. It's like, well, maybe then that's right, because comedy and horror are the two, they're almost identical in terms of that they're both trading on like pure emotional reaction rather than like a kind of like cerebral, analytical kind of experience with the movie. They're even more interesting, I would say, that it's the same people that make them. Zach Cregger is a comedian. Some of the recent horror films that I've liked a lot lately, like Possum, which we talked about, Werewolves Within, one of my favorite horror comedy films from recent years. Talk to Me, that those New Zealand guys, or Australian, I think they're Australian actually, like that are really hot right now. And then obviously Jordan Peele, who's maybe the most respected horror auteur right now. These are all comedians. Their films are stacked full of comedic actors, Zach Cregger amongst them. It is, I think, horror and comedy have to be watched right, because if you're not in the right headspace and you're not in the right mood for what it's going to do, like if you're watching a comedy and you're not finding it funny because you're not in the right conditions to find it funny. Now, of course, it might be outside of what you can ever find funny, like outside of your sense of humor, and a horror movie can be outside of what you could ever find scary. That's also a thing. But if you're also just putting yourself on the back foot of like, I'm not in the right mood for a comedy, or I'm not in the right situation to be scared, then there's pointless watching a horror or a comedy. Whereas a drama or a thriller or something like that could get you on side sort of over the course of the film. Anyway, enough about that. You mentioned early in the movie, you were wondering whether it made sense kind of from a narrative perspective that the whole mob blames Julia Garner. Correct me if I'm wrong with that. Maybe I misunderstood you, but you're saying like you didn't really necessarily buy into the idea that everyone would blame Julia Garner because it's so like everyone, as the police officer says, Toby Huss, by the way, great character actor, loved him in The Rental and loved seeing him pop up. He mentions like, well, these kids all just walked out of their house and ran. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, how could she have been involved? I think they blame her in the most logical way possible, which is that they think they can't put their finger on it, but they think, how could she not have had something to do with it? All the kids that were under her care in her room, except for one, of course, all walked away and left, and none of the other kids did. And so they accuse her of being a witch. And that might sound crazy because you're like, how could witches aren't real? What are you talking about? Like, why wouldn't you just be completely pragmatic and scientific and sensible about it and understand that there is no possible way that she could have been involved? But I'm telling you, as a father of two young children, that it would be impossible for those parents to not feel incredibly uncomfortable about and incredibly suspicious about this Julia Garner character, who I think delivers a great performance. I have taken a little while to warm to her over the years, seen her in a lot of stuff, and this is the movie that finally made me go like, yeah, fully on board now, fully a fan of her. I think she has to do a lot in this movie with like the flirtatious kind of side of things, the alcoholic side of things, the just general, like it's a complex character rather than like something that she played in like The Assistant or what was it, The Royal Hotel or something like that. I forget the name of that movie, but like a lot of the times I've seen her in the past, it's been a bit one note. This one was like, okay, yeah, she's really, really good. So I've definitely bought into the fear that they felt about her. You mentioned Pulp Fiction as a reference. I thought of Pulp Fiction a lot as I was watching it. Obviously, Pulp Fiction kind of popularized this narrative style, and then many other films copied it. I'm sure there's precursors to Pulp Fiction that also did it, but it was popularized in the mainstream, and it was introduced to me personally with Pulp Fiction. And I think all these years later of watching this done, maybe it's cooled off in recent years and it's not done so much anymore, but we've seen many examples of films structured like this. Pulp Fiction still sort of remains the gold standard for me. And I'll tell you why. And this is a good example for me of this film of why that structure doesn't really work for me that well. This film, you mentioned how they hold off on giving you the little boy's story until the end of the movie. The little boy's storyline fills in all the blanks and you get the full context of what you've been seeing. And up until now, it's been very mysterious. You haven't really got a full grasp on things. And this is kind of how Barbarian is structured. It's got that sort of 3 acts or 4 acts if you include that one sequence of the bad guy going like shopping and stuff like that. Both films are like, where to start you having absolutely fucking zero knowledge or information about what this film is about. And then every time you're getting close to like getting a good bit of context, we're going to yank you out of that. We're going to like change the point of view character and keep you as far away as possible from the reality until the 3rd act in the movie. And this film does the exact same thing. Pulp Fiction doesn't do that. So Pulp Fiction is a series of vignettes, you could say, series of shorts, however you want to phrase it, that all completely independently stand on their own as great stories. And the film benefits from its structure, but doesn't necessitate its structure. Its structure is not a band-aid over fundamental flaws with the movie, as it is with Zach Cregger's work. So in the case of Weapons, like you said, when you finally get the full context and everything, it starts to not really make much sense anymore. It's a bit kind of silly, and it's he hasn't actually got a brilliant, bulletproof, perfect idea. It's still good up until the end. I still like it, but it's become worse and worse and worse in its third act. The stuff of the kids all like smashing through the windows and the kind of goofy comedy type stuff. It's just like the third act of Barbarian, where like the monster woman jumps off the thing after the girl to like cushion her blow. So it's bad. Like it's just pure bad filmmaking and script writing. And they're both really good movies, so I'm not like saying that these issues take down the movie, but both films are sort of an exercise in, I've got bad stuff somewhere in this movie, bad ideas, bad plot holes, bad, like, I've got issues, I've got fundamental flaws with what I'm working with. So I'm just gonna, every time we get close to that, to where the film would start to fall apart, I'm going to take you away. And another thing, and this is not a plot hole or anything like that, but it's like the film is obviously much less scary when you know when you get context on the aunt, right? Aunt Gladys. When you go from, I haven't a fucking clue what's going on, like literally anything could be going on, this is just fucking scary. When it goes, no, it's just one witch and she's a bad witch and she's bad and she's got to do bad things, that's like way less scary. It's not, I'm not to say it's like zero scariness, but it's obviously less scary than just like fucking who knows what the nature of the world is, and it's all just like there's threat out there and it's completely undefined. So again, like every time we could get close to any kind of information or anything like that, yank you out of that. And so that to me is the big difference between Pulp Fiction and Weapons, or Pulp Fiction and almost every other movie that uses Pulp Fiction's kind of framing structure. Is it bringing you here and there and changing the narrative to plaster over issues that the film has and flaws that the film has, or is this just from an artful perspective the most interesting and engaging way to interact with the material? So I like this thing because it's in both movies, Barbarian, this of like, oh, who's this person here now? What are they up to? Oh, this is fresh. This is interesting. Lost did this with the beginning of every episode of Lost. You had like, where are we now? Who are we following? Like, this is fresh. This is interesting. It's engaging. But quickly in Weapons, you start to feel like, okay, we're sort of delaying things. We're treading water here. We're just sort of playing for time. We're sort of stretching things out. And it's forgivable because the acting is so good, the directing is so good, that the moment-to-moment events are so engaging and so well done. And you're kind of, as you're watching Weapons, you're almost never watching something that isn't just really, really entertaining and engaging content. So I'll forgive it, and I'll consider Weapons a really good movie. But I did start to increasingly go, now let's actually get into the movie more. Like, let's give us, let's propel this forward a bit. So yeah, interesting comparison there. You talked about like, why doesn't she get Julia Garner to jump off a bridge? I think again, this sort of comes down to the issues with the movie to an extent. I mean, there's an argument I can make for it, which is, well, because that's not necessarily how she wants to use Julie Garner. She might want to use her as a weapon. Like, she seems to hold people as ammunition. Like, she's got all those kids there, and she'll, like, when she goes to Benedict Wong and his boyfriend's house, the boyfriend she just wants to get rid of straight away, just get him murdered instantly. But the Benedict Wong she wants to use to kill Julie Garner. And well, that seems to be the case. Well, actually, you know what? Now I'm saying it out. She did want to kill Julie Garner, so why didn't she kill her then? Does she need something else that she's missing? No, I don't think she does. Okay, so she should have been able to control Julie Garner right from the get-go, as soon as she got that lock of hair. So why try and kill her? Yeah, that is a plot hole. But the other thing is, it's very vague and undefined, is what else does she want from these people? Like, what else does she get from them? Because there's this scene where the boy walks into the room and she's on the floor and she's really sick, and she goes, look, I thought having your parents, in other words, like holding them in my control and my power, would like cure me, but it hasn't. But maybe if we get all of your classmates down here, then that will be enough. So there's clearly some sort of sustenance that she gets. It's not just a simple, they are like marionettes and that's it. There is something else going on, and it's either in a deleted scene or Kreger didn't feel it was necessary to spell that out, and he thought, you know what, not everything needs to be defined. And I guess the less charitable interpretation is like, I can't be bothered to work that out. Again, film is always entertaining, always compelling, but when I watch films that have plot holes, and we debate this a lot, because you'll go, well, look, if you're distracted from something, then it's not an issue. And I go, well, yeah, but it's like the opportunity cost. Maybe if instead of distracting from that thing, they had actually thought it out and made something consistent and like really, really well thought and works the entire way, maybe that would be an even better experience than the one I had. So anyway, I guess it's kind of nitpicks, but it's also kind of like both films he's made have sort of fallen apart a bit in the third act. And, that should be mentioned, I think. I think the actors are fantastic. I've already mentioned Julie Garner. I think Alden Ehrenreich is brilliant in this. If he had made this film straight after Hail Caesar, I mean, I guess he would have been much younger, but Jesus, that could have been a whole different story than doing Solo after Hail Caesar, which destroyed his entire career. But yeah, we see in this film why he was briefly the hottest property in Hollywood. Brolin, I thought, was an interesting addition. Somehow he felt like he was too famous an actor to be in that role. I just wanted the father character who he kind of represents the parents of the children in a way. I kind of would rather him just be like a very normal non-movie star, kind of like average guy from the neighborhood, like maybe a not famous actor and a not like Hollywood looking actor. I know he's supposed to be kind of a bit of an alpha male type guy, but he was fine. But it just slightly distracted me that he was played by Josh Brolin. But yeah, it's no biggie. He's obviously great. I love Brolin. I loved Austin Abrams, who's the junkie character. I've seen him in a few things over the years. I think it's the first time I've seen him as an adult character, or I guess he's like, I don't know, 18 or something. I don't know how old the character's supposed to be, but he was hilarious and he was brilliant. And all of these actors, all these like horror icons now who come from a comedy background, like Jordan Peele and stuff, they can't resist putting a lot of comedy in their movies. Comedy can work really well with horror, and it can also undermine it. It's a delicate balance that I think most of these guys, including Zach Kreger, sometimes get wrong. They sometimes go too far into comedy. For my taste, I'm sure people love it. I mean, Weapons is a fucking giant hit movie, but for what it's worth, I thought he delivered a very good comedic performance. So definitely eager to see more from him. And also just learned Tim Heidecker, my own hero, who has a supporting role in Us, and obviously coming from a comedy background. He's done a lot of horror adjacent stuff. He is writing a straight up horror movie at the moment. So it's going to be another horror comedy evolution story coming up. He talked about Aunt Gladys's reveal, and this is interesting. So we get the beginning of the movie, we have no clue what's coming on. Make it up yourself, like come up with your own theories. I assumed that the kids were bad, that they, for one reason or another, it was going to be a Children of the Corn type scenario. Well, not that I had like the actual logic of that worked out, but I was like, the kids are off somewhere, and maybe more and more kids are going to get added to that pool, and then they can come back and kill all the adults in the town. I'm not saying there was anything substantiating that claim, but it's just like, Children of the Damned type thing. It's like a classic trope. They hold off on revealing what is actually the situation for a long time. You see Aunt Gladys quite often, but it's kind of a Pennywise type thing where just like snatches of, you don't really know what's going on. The movie is quite reminiscent of it. It's kind of like a good version of those movies that came out about 10 years ago. And then we have the scene where Aunt Gladys shows up at Benedict Wong's office, and you see her through the sort of like the glass, the kind of frosted glass or whatever coming through. And here's what I'd say about this character. Incredible acting. I mean, looking her up on IMDb, I can see that this actress, Amy Madigan, is someone that I've seen many times before. I've also learned that she's been married to Ed Harris for over 40 years, which is pretty impressive. There's not many Hollywood marriages that have lasted that long. And I love Ed Harris. And I've enjoyed in recent years with films like Love Lies Bleeding, watching Ed Harris kind of refashion himself as like creepy ancient guy, because he seems to play characters that are even older than he is, and she's done that in this movie. I don't know if she's like got inspired by her husband's choices, but yeah, I never said the words Amy Madigan in my life. I actually thought for the whole movie that it was an actress called Kathy Baker, who is a TV, well, I know her mainly as a TV actress. I think she might have even won an Oscar back in the day, but she is brilliant. She delivers a fantastic performance. The costuming, the makeup, the whole package that has been created here is absolutely fantastic. And if you're going to make a witch movie, this is a really good version of it. I much prefer this than Hereditary, for example, and most witch things. At the same time, once you found out, the plot of this movie is that there's one bad witch whose goals and plans and actions are ill-defined in the movie, but she's just a bad person. She's going to do ill-defined bad things vaguely. If you find out that is ultimately what this film is going to be, well, that's a damn sight less compelling than the million and one things that were options for the first 2/3 of the movie, where it's like, what the fuck is going on? It's like that classic M. Night Shyamalan intrigue. So the character is great, the acting is great, the costuming, all that is brilliant. I loves her as a presence, but it just does deflate the movie a little bit for me when it shifts gears into that. And yeah, I think I've kind of gone over the points that you made. So just, I guess, like to wrap this up, I would say I liked this movie a lot. I found it very, very entertaining. I didn't really find it scary, which is fine. That's like, if this movie wasn't scary and was a bad movie, then I'd be like, fuck. Well, I guess that was shit. That wasn't, you win some, you lose some. But for me, this movie was not scary, but a really good movie with like incredible cinematography and music and choreography and like always like loads of fun, interesting stuff going on. So yeah, I definitely didn't feel remiss to have watched it. And it's also nice to watch a movie with fever pitch anticipation and then have a good time with it. I think that's a real testament to this film. I'm obviously looking forward to more. I know that his next movie is a Resident Evil adaptation, which is a shame because he's managed to do 2 movies outside of IP. If we could get a couple more in before he goes into IP land, that would be ideal. But hopefully he's developed enough cachet at this point where even venturing into the world of IP, he can still do something good. I'll obviously believe it when I see it. And I wonder, will we get a third Hagsploitation movie? Because there is some of that across the Resident Evil franchise. But yeah, good movie, good flick, and eager to see more from Gregor.
Hey man, great hearing your thoughts. I saw this movie last Friday, actually, so a week ago. So I don't really have much to add to what you said, from also lack of memory, but also just I think we're very much in agreement on a lot of things in this movie. Just a couple of things. You made a great point about you're correct, is the gold standard as far as we're concerned about this kind of narrative in a different chronology. Although I want to watch Memento actually again. But yeah, you're right. Each scene in Pulp Fiction is just a fantastic scene in itself, and it doesn't need glue of an overall plot to hold it together. And I feel like while that isn't true of Weapons, as you said, this guy is such a master director in doing what he does. It doesn't really matter in this as well, regardless of how perhaps a little bit overextended this movie is. Each scene is brimming with something that you can really enjoy, whether it's the junkies, Day Out, a Eldrin Reich or whatever his name is, his dilemma as well with the junkie, or just quieter scenes. So yeah, this guy is always giving us something interesting and always something exciting, and that's great. It's a shame that he's getting mixed in with those awful Resident Evil crowd, but you know, if anyone can make a go of that franchise, he can. So I don't know whether to be excited or not. And I think when a filmmaker, presuming these are his first two films, I know you mentioned something else prior. Don't know if that means I've missed a film or that's a TV show. But I think when a filmmaker gives us two on the bounce, we can start to be excited, cautiously optimistic is a term that's used in in Football Manager when you're asked about your prospects for next season. So I'd say we'd be cautiously optimistic about what he has next. And I just read there, I think there's an Weapon sequel as well. I don't know if he's going to be attached to that directly or maybe just as a producer, but I don't think there's much else to see here really in this world, I wouldn't have thought. And yeah, I've been a fan of Julie Garner for a while, and I think this is a brilliant performance. I'm a little bit troubled to know that you will be harassing a school teacher along with the rest of the mob as a parent, looking for someone to blame. But maybe you might be more like the Josh Brolin's character and going on a detective's journey to try and uncover it. But, you know, as a parent, you're now part of that mob. Hashtag not my child. But yeah, I think we're very much lock and step in this movie. And just a final response to your thing where you're talking about comedies, you need something added, and horror movies, you need something taken away. That's a very good point. And I wasn't so much making a point myself as musing is the word, Michael. I was musing about these things. I don't know where I felt myself per se, but it was great hearing your thoughts about it as somebody who has been advocating for late night horror. And I do get the point about you're not being distracted, which I do agree with. You're eliminating distractions, but there is also something that has been added by watching a movie pitch black at night when there's a different energy outside. If there's a knock on the door or there's a noise outside or there's a strange sound in the house, that's not been something taken away. That's something being added based on the time of night. But whatever the case, I think I'm going to try my best to follow that code of practice, Michael's code, as it shall now forever be called. And let's see, Spooktober year 2 of me getting involved, how much I will shit myself and watch all these other movies from different times where if it's an older movie, can I be scared if it's late at night? I know I can be by newer movies, but it'll be interesting to see some of the movies we watched last year where I really enjoyed them on a conversational level and a viewing experience, but certainly didn't feel scared. But there's been a few other movies, I think it's The Innocents was one of them, where you felt a bit scared. Let me try a movie like that at 10 p.m. at night and see what extra thing I can possibly get from it. But yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a magic wand. Like, I think The Innocents, which I adore as a movie, I don't know how scary one can find it now in this day and age, no matter what conditions you watch it under. I just think that it's like it's turning up the chance of you liking it. So let's say you watch a blockbuster, like a spectacle type movie, like Spider-Man or Titanic or something like that, and you watch it on a 14-inch TV with the sound quite quiet, just sound coming out of a mono speaker on the TV. You will get a sense of the spectacle. You might enjoy the spectacle of the movie, but you're inhibiting the chances that you're going to get completely overwhelmed by the spectacle of it, I think. And if you watch some shitty Marvel movie, the spectacle is all like really fake and composited blue screen and stuff like that, then you can watch that in an IMAX cinema and you're not really going to get much sense of spectacle. So it's not a magic wand, but it is, I would say, like definitely advisable. And it's an interesting question about like whether you're adding something or subtracting, just subtracting, or you're adding. You're saying that if you watch something in the already more vulnerable kind of uncomfortable, creepy air of late at night, then you are adding that. And like, fair enough, I completely agree. I think it's something of a semantic argument to an extent, but I think the thing that you're mainly subtracting is, yes, you're subtracting distractions, and that's good for any movie. Literally every single movie, the more distractions you can subtract, the better. But the main thing that I look to subtract when I watch horror is comfort. Some sort of, I want to feel vulnerable, like I want to feel on edge. My favorite, like I fell in love with horror with the film Scream 2, which I think is 98. I think that film came out in 97 or 98, something around there. And I saw it when it came out on video. And I was the only person awake in the house. I watched the movie. I turned off the movie, and then I realized I'm sat in fucking darkness with like shadows all around me. And I have to walk from this room out to another room. But who knows who could be around the corner and stuff. And getting to that level of feeling unsafe is such an adrenaline ride that anything that's making you feel safe, like for example, pausing the movie halfway through to go get some nice comforting chips and dip or something, is, I think, working counter to the scares. So yes, it's semantics, whether you're like adding discomfort or you're subtracting comfort, but I think that all that type of stuff helps. And then to the question about like Pulp Fiction and weapons. So don't get me wrong, I really, really liked Weapons. There was pretty much never a moment in Weapons where I was like, I don't want to be watching Weapons. I'm done with this movie. It does drag a bit towards the very end, and by its very, 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 very end, it's not really doing anything I like anymore. The end chase sequence of all the kids and stuff like that. It's like we've gone off the reservation now. We're just like Barbarian. We've eventually reached a point where this movie is no longer that good, but when it's been so good for so long, I'm like, fine. We had this with Sinners earlier in the year, where it's like, I reach a certain point with the movie where I'm like, the movie's not really doing it for me anymore at this point, but it's been such a great, enjoyable ride that, like, go on, mess it up a bit at the end, fine, whatever. So I was enjoying it the whole way through its structure, and it's like going back in time and stuff like that. However, the difference between Pulp Fiction and Weapons is the same as Barbarian in this regard, is that whenever Weapons like yanks you away from a moment, it's because it realizes that if it goes further into this moment, if it sticks to that timeline or whatever, it sticks to those characters, it can't sustain itself, right? So it's just when you're just reaching that point of like, okay, like what the fuck, and it'll then go, now let's take it. It's the kind of building up of tension and then release that Barbarian does, where if we just stuck with this now, with this monster or this intensity or this plot moment or whatever, we couldn't sustain that. We'd fizzle out the movie pretty soon, either because it would just be like repetitive, or we'd show too much, or we get too much closure on things or whatever. It's like we've got a choice between killing the movie or just like throwing you way off to somewhere else and starting from scratch and a new intriguing and interesting plot and story. And like, I don't want to be too critical of that because I enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed both movies, and like that scene in Barbarian where like you first see what you see and then it cuts to Justin Long driving along in his sports car, like singing along to the music. Like it's engaging, it's fun, but it is different. It feels a bit more gimmicky somehow than Pulp Fiction, where it's just like, we've got great characters, we've got a great world, we've got great tone and mood, and like this is just the way that felt the most natural to tell the story. That with the likes of Weapons, it feels like it's essential to tell the story this way. And then you mentioned Memento. I mean, most of Chris Nolan's stuff, like Dunkirk and stuff, it feels like this is just his like indulgence of telling the story that way. But in the case of Memento, it's a bit different because it's specifically told in reverse, and the character has insomnia, so he doesn't like. You're seeing events that happened before the previous event you saw, but the character didn't know about that, and neither did you. And I think that's different to this thing, where in Pulp Fiction and Weapons, there is no in-world narrative reason why we're cutting back and forth in time or whatever. We're just like, it's a pure filmmaking abstraction that isn't kind of in any way integrated into the themes or the plot or whatever. But yeah, anyway, good movie. Really enjoyed it. Good to chew over. And yeah, hopefully you're right about Resident Evil. I think, it has happened before that people have managed to turn like video games or whatever into good things. I loved Barbarian for its reality. I liked Weapons less, in no small part because it's about stuff I don't believe in. Resident Evil is also about stuff I don't believe in. I'm a huge fan of the film Wreck. I can enjoy a zombie movie. I can find them scary, and I can connect with supernatural horror. But like after Barbarian, I would really love to see him do more stuff in like a less supernatural kind of vein, because even Barbarian is borderline supernatural. But I think, I don't know, I just like, my favorite thing about Barbarian, as I said again, is like, it's that first act, and to see him do like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre or a Scream or a Psycho or something like that would really be really tantalizing.
Yeah, well done for sneaking in a definitive analysis and case for the narrative structure of Pulp Fiction whilst talking about Weapons. It's like the best case I've ever heard for that movie, just been slipped in casually at the end of this in regards to its timeline. Yeah, great stuff. Scream 2, brilliant movie, scared the shit out of me as well. And what was the other thing he said? Yeah, do you know what? I forget that. I would love to see him do like a straight up thriller, like Mad Max, a new Mad Max, or something like Minority Report. Like, forget horror. Just have him do the good stuff, like a straight up. Have him do something like The Raid or something. Like, he's got that's what he's real ability is just pure adrenaline entertainment. It doesn't necessarily have to be in any kind of horror genre, does it?
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.